Okay, we're recording. And we'll let people in and then say hi, and then I'll bring up the presentation, right?
Yep, awesome.
Yeah, we'll. Oops. Yeah, it's weird not being able to see anything.
What do you mean not be able to see anything?
Well, when you go into presentation mode.
I know, usually on the run running the presentation.
I guess I usually just expand it, but I don't make it that big.
If you're running the presentation, that's all you see. So you can't see the chat, you can't see people.
Mhm.
I don't see the people either. No.
Neither do I, but I'm not on the Artist Network, so I'm assuming Barb's letting them all in, or Kate.
There's 48 people waiting in the waiting room. Should I let them in?
Yeah, I think we should just get going. It's like 7:08. So is Barb off? Is she not joining us?
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm just
did you let-
turning my screen off because I'll make faces while I do the count.
Did you let them in?
No, I'm not seeing them. I'm not seeing
I can
participants.
see them. It's so weird because I can see them. It looks like I have to admit them all separately.
Oh,
No,
this
you
should be admit all. That's
I
weird.
know. I know.
And one other thing, Barb, Carolyn reached out to me because she didn't have the link, and she.
I sent it out to her. She was on one of the lists.
So she
yeah.
did get it. She just.
She should have gotten it, but I'm getting a lot of people are, let me in.
I know. For some reason, I have to admit every single person individually as opposed to
Oh,
admit all. So I don't really know why that is, because that's very unusual. It's going to take a long time.
I'm finally in.
Hi, Gail.
Yeah, I've been trying for 10 minutes.
I know. Well, so for some reason, we can't seem to, like, I have to actually go and let every single person in individually as opposed to admit all.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. So people are going to get a little frustrated with us.
yeah.
So Kate, if you're showing the presentation later on and Barb can't see people coming in, how are we going to let people in who are coming in late?
I usually get a notification.
Even if you're in presentation mode?
Oh, I don't know.
Should I go out? During the Artist Network and Barb's in. Barb, maybe you should
Yeah.
log out and log back in. Like you need to be able to see the people if they're waiting.
Okay.
An hour and a half.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Hey, everyone.
Now, oh, here's a whole bunch more. I still have to admit a bunch of people. I want to apologize. There's something with our Zoom where I have to admit every single person individually as opposed to admit all. So I don't know why. And so that is why it's taking so long, and we apologize for that. So talk amongst yourselves.
Can't see anybody else.
You
I
can't?
wish I could see everyone, but I can't.
Can't see anyone.
I can see a few people.
Yeah, you can see me, I think.
No, I can't. I can hear you, Steve.
Oh, okay, wait a minute.
Oh, there we go.
I'm tuning in on audio only because I'm sitting here in my PJs and they're not the best.
Oh, come on. We want to see.
Splenda.
All right, so I'm able to let people in now,
Okay, awesome. Yeah, great.
but I don't want to reclaim host because you need to be host, right, Kate?
I don't need to be. You can just, but I think we've got everybody in now.
Is everyone in?
So Barb,
Barb, yeah.
I think you should reclaim host and then give sharing presentation privileges to everybody. So then Kate can
Okay.
present.
Yeah,
I think you should watch from an admin's perspective, from the host, so you can let people in.
sounds good. I can
Okay,
still
so
share
everyone
screen.
who's here. Big apologies for the, excuse me, some of the technical snafu that was going on with our Zoom link. I'm sure for those that were, sort of seeping in, Kate had to let everyone in individually. So anyhow, we're all here now, and welcome to tonight's session with Angela Lane and, of course, Kate Taylor. And the session is how to create a strong submission. And I think it's something that we can all sort of glean from and learn a few things from and all that good stuff. And but to start it all off, yeah.
Sorry, can we just ask everybody to mute themselves? Just
Yes, please
because
mute
we're getting a lot
yourself.
of feedback.
I'm hearing a
So,
TV.
Barb, if you can mute people, that would be
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm trying to, yeah.
So if you could just mute yourself, that would be great. Then Kat can talk a little clearer.
Okay, great. I'll be moderating the session tonight. It's going to be a bit of a looser session, so I'm going to be welcoming, questions as they come in. And to start things off, though, thank you, Gail Williams, who is going to be doing the land acknowledgement.
So let me just bring up my screen. I'm going to try and share my screen. Sorry, where is it? Yep, of course, can't find my screen. Oh my goodness, this is like the land of technical challenges today. Barb, did you give me permission to share my screen? Because it looks like I should be able to, but. Barb?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Hmm.
I'm really sorry. I've done this so many times before. I don't really know what's going on here. Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
Okay, can everybody see my screen? I'm going to try and do it this way versus a full screen, so I can actually still keep an eye on people and see the chat and stuff. Does that work for everybody? Ange, can you see everything?
Yeah, but it's probably better if you do the full screen because it'll be bigger, I think, Kate. Because we see everything at the top. Do you want, yeah, that's better. It's cleaner.
Okay. All right, that means I'll just kind of hide all this stuff. Okay. Sorry, Kat. Oh, you can we can move forward with the land acknowledgement.
Okay, the Artist Network and yes, I unmuted myself. The Artist Network and the Leslie Grove Gallery acknowledge the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Wendat peoples. These territories are the enduring home to many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples from across Turtle Island. We also acknowledge that we are hosted on land covered by Treaty 13, held by the Mississaugas of the Credit. Toronto is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, which bound the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee peoples to peacefully share and protect the lands of the Great Lakes. In the spirit of this covenant, we are grateful to be able to meet, create, and grow together in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect on this ancestral land.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Okay, so we sort of want to get an idea of who our audience is tonight. And what I'm going to ask is, are we looking at, I know we're looking at, 80 plus people out there. Are you new to the Artist Network? Are you more of a, as one of our seasoned players, emerging artists, that sort of thing? If you could just pop into the chat, sort of where you are on the scale of emerging to not so emerging and new, that sort of thing. Okay, so we've got a few newbies. Perfect. Okay, so amazing.
How do
New.
I do that? Fuck.
So I'd have to say that I am seeing about 80% new people.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we do have a mixed bag of not a member, emerging, and yeah, 80% new. Yeah, I'm just reading them coming in. Established. Okay. So Angela and Kate. There you go.
Okay.
We've got a whole, a newer audience out there.
Okay, well, that's helpful because what we're going to do is we're going to actually just move forward initially to do part A, which is generically what you should be doing for creating a good submission. Part 2 will be a little bit more specifics about the Artist Network shows. But I think that Kat mentioned earlier, we want this to be super interactive. So what we'll do is we'll kind of finish one section and open it up for questions so that at the end of the day, you will have everything you need to know about you're doing your submissions.
Yeah, so don't be shy to ask questions. I mean, that's why we're here, to hopefully answer some of those.
Perfect.
And I can't really read anybody because I can't see anyone. So you're gonna have to tell me when you want me to advance the slides.
I think you should advance the slide to the.
Yep.
agenda.
Here's our agenda.
Oh, okay, can you just go back? There. So specifically, just so people know what's coming up, so you're asking questions about things. I think we're gonna talk, Kate mentioned 2 parts. So about reading the requirements, themes, images, photography, artist statement and bio, and then the results of like general shows. And then part 2, we're going to focus a little bit more on the Artist Network specific shows. You can ask specific questions about those shows if you're looking for doing submissions. So the art walks and the Leslie Grove Gallery, membership submissions, and then fees and deadlines on those specific shows.
Okay, here we go. So I think that one of the things at the very beginning is don't eliminate yourself before you start. And having been on the jurying of a number of shows too, it's very often that it isn't the art that doesn't get in, but it's the way that it's been created. It's the quality of the photographs. It's the lack of the number of images. And so really, it's super important that you kind of make sure you really understand the show that you're applying to. Confirm that you actually are eligible. Sometimes your eligibility in terms of how long you've been producing, whether or not you're from a certain region, whether or not you're a sculptor. And so it's kind of important not to waste your time with that. Understand what you're applying for. Is this an indoor show, outdoor, a festival? Is it a 5-day show? Is it a 2-day show? Is it a 1-day show? Again, you know, what you don't want to do is put all this work into creating a submission and then finding you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was a 1-day show in Northern Ontario and that doesn't work for me. Understand the difference in the fees between a submission fee, which is typically non-refundable, and then the participation fees, which are paid after you have been accepted. Sometimes those are refundable, sometimes they're not. Sometimes that's partially refundable. So make sure you kind of understand that. Understand how big the space is. Is it a tent? Is it a wall? Is it, do you have to bring your own grids? There's a whole bunch of things like that. Sorry? Oh, sorry. I saw someone was talking, but I can't hear what the question was.
Yeah, I think it was just somebody who's not muted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Knowing especially knowing the location and logistics issues, whether or not this show is out of town, in which case there would be potentially, mileage and travel and overnight stays and food and beverage that might actually add to the cost of your show. So you have to make sure that that's something you want to do. Most shows require the artists themselves to be on site most of the time. So again, it's not like you can apply and then send your friend or an assistant and stuff to sit the tent unless it's extremely unusual circumstances. The reasons people want to go to these shows is because they want to meet the artists and they want to talk to the artist directly. So that's going to be important. You need to make sure that your timing will allow for that to happen.
Yeah, specifically for shows where you're having a booth versus like maybe a gallery show. A gallery show is a little bit different,
Yeah.
but specifically for those shows, you want to assume that you need to be there 99% of the time.
Yeah. And for an outdoor show, it is rain or shine. So if the weather is crappy and it's raining on your head and your feet are wet, unless the show organizer says the show is closed, you need to stay there. If you leave early, that is potentially a black mark against you and you will not be accepted into that show likely in the moving forward. So, being an artist is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot, even these shows is a lot of work and you just have to understand what you're getting into. The other important part is, again, what do you get for your participation fee? Sometimes walls are included. Most outdoor shows, they are not, and the tents are not included. But you can work with a tent rental company. So understand what the costs are associated with that. Indoor spaces, sometimes you can hang on the wall, sometimes you can't. All of that information should be in the original document that talks to you about what the show is about. So please take the time to read that.
Yeah, so, and you need to plan accordingly. So I'm just going to put a little flag out there specifically in regards to even like working with a tent rental company. You need to plan for that because some shows, you actually have to go pick up your tent, you have to go pick up your weights, you have to move them to your booth space. That would be Cabbage Town. Other shows, the walls will be up for you, but a lot of shows and artists seem to not read details sometimes, but you need to
Often.
read, yeah, you need to read the details because most tent company rental companies, like if you're ordering a tent and you're ordering some grids, they don't hang those grids up. And if you don't tell them where the fences go, they don't know where the fences go. So they don't do that. That's not their responsibility. That's not their job. That's your job. So if you can't do that on your own, you need to plan for that at a show. At least when you're looking at submissions, understand what's a good fit for you and what's not.
Yeah. Very important. I think some of this might be a little bit of overlap. But I think that the other thing too is that most submissions are done online. Do you want to take this one, Ange? If there's anything else I've
Sure.
missed, you can add to it.
I think really it's like Kate had mentioned in the previous slide, it's really about reading all the submission details. But what I find really helpful before I do a submission is actually take a look at the submission, even kind of run through a little bit, know if you're going to have a hiccup. A lot of submissions you can kind of click on and click through without actually completing the submission, but make sure you have everything prepared ahead of time. So when I do a submission, I prepare all my images ahead of time. I prepare my bio. Like I look at the word count that they're looking for in the description, either the artist statement or the bio or what they're looking for. And then I actually create a document. I have that all ready. So then when I go to do the submission, I'm prepared. So I can drop in my images easily. They're saved at the size that are required. My statement is the length that's required. It's focused on what that specific show might be looking for. I do all my research ahead of time. So I look at the show, I look at everything beforehand, and I'd say that a lot of artist submissions, they don't do that. Like you can just see like they're having a problem uploading images. It's usually the size. At any rate, I think just look at what all the requirements are and then prep those things ahead of time, then go in and do your submission. So, and then make sure you're eligible. There are some shows that you need to be a member of something to actually submit to. I think some of the Ontario shows or whatever are like that, but they might have like another submission for up and coming artists. So read the terms and conditions. Online has become a standard, or like these hybrid shows have been a bit of a standard through COVID. So make sure that you understand what's required of you from an online perspective. And really actually doing your submission online. I don't know any show that actually doesn't do an online submission process. So make sure that you have a computer. It's not great to use an iPad or your phone to do submissions. It's also using different browsers. Some browsers are more successful than others. I would not use Safari if you're doing a submission for a show. I would say Google Chrome is a good standard one to use, and a computer is the best way to actually do a submission. Sometimes you can't actually upload stuff with some of the other
Devices.
Yeah. So what else is here?
I think the other thing I just wanted to reiterate a point that Angela made is that often if you have to do your bio, you're going to need to edit that down to 200 characters or whatever. So what I always do is I make sure that I save that in a Word document as opposed to just creating that bio in the actual app. The reason for that is that even with best laid plans, sometimes these submission programs can be fussy, and sometimes in the middle of it, you lose what you've done. At least that way, you don't have to recreate it. You've got the things that you need. Some submissions also will allow you to get a certain way and save it. Others, you have to submit everything all at once. And when you hit submit, that's it. So that's the other part that kind of, like Ange was saying, be prepared. This is probably the most important thing that we're going to say is know what you're getting into before you start it.
I think to Kate's point, I do mine in Word as well, because it actually lets me do a spell check. It allows you to do word count. So if you don't know how to do a word count, you can do word counts, and you can do character counts. Some submissions are looking for character counts. Some submissions you use words without spaces. Some use words with spaces. So if you think, oh, it's within the word count, I don't know why it's not working. Sometimes it's because a space is counted as a character. So there's all these different things. So I would just I do it in Word, and then I edit until it's the right size for a submission. So I would say, don't be lazy with your preparation for a submission. I would say it's really important to take the time to create a submission. I would say even for gallery shows or like these outdoor shows as well, you want to give them the submission that they're looking for. You don't want to make it work for a juror to try to understand your work. So that's in regards to the bio and your artist statement. I think one thing that I do is it's also helpful as well later on, if you didn't get in the show or you got in the show, what was successful and what's not, you now have it in this Word document. So you actually have your submission. So you know what you've done 1 year to the next. So it's a history for you as well. So you can maybe pick up that that statement and use it for another submission and edit a little bit for that particular show. So it's very helpful to keep these documents from submissions. I've used a submission from 1 year to another with a bit of edits, thinking, oh, I could make this a bit stronger. And then make note of all the deadlines. So Kate had mentioned this, I think, maybe, I don't know, but putting the dates in your calendar. I do that all the time. So in my calendar right now, I have a bunch of different submissions that are going to be due in a couple of weeks. So I actually pop that in my calendar. So I know I do this submission this week, prep my images. If I need to do photographs of specific paintings that I've been doing, I'll make sure that I have those done by that date. I wait for the good day to do those photographs on. So it is preparation, and submissions do take time and effort, but it's important to take that time and that effort for submissions. The note here is look at past participants to get a feel of the show and the quality of the work. That actually gives you a good idea of whether you're a good fit for the show. I think that that's always helpful to look at other artists that are in the show, look at their online presence and their website. So it's not necessarily just about judging the show, but it's about finding the right fit. And then one thing that's really helpful is to take a look at the show the year before. I know people, like at our shows anyway, there's a lot of artists come 1 year and they're checking it out 1 year and they're maybe going to submit the next year. And I think that happens a lot. So it's one way to really get a good feel for a show. Most shows have a frequently asked questions section or a document that you can look at. There's often questions in there that are somewhat helpful. And I would say, make sure you don't leave it to the last minute. I think that this is on another slide, but make sure that you give time to reach out to show admin. If you don't have if you have questions about it or you're not sure about your eligibility, there's usually a contact person you can reach out to. And then be aware of the payment processes. I think there's still artists out there who think they can just drop off a payment or do an e-transfer, and most shows don't accept that. Most shows are going to ask you for, they use the processing system of PayPal, but you don't have to pay with PayPal. PayPal allows you to pay with credit card as well. And I think some people don't understand that, but you do always have that option. Kate, is there anything I missed there? Or?
The only thing that's kind of connected to don't leave it to the last minute, which we also probably reiterate about 50 times in this presentation, is that, you know, if the submission is due tonight at midnight, don't start tonight at 10 o'clock. Not only because if you run into any issues, you've got no time. And you can't assume that just because you've had technical issues that the organizers of the show are going to be okay giving you a deadline. But also because if a whole bunch of people are trying to apply before midnight that day, the systems themselves sometimes get slow and sluggish and sometimes crash. So, you know, I would say do it at least 24, 48 hours ahead of time so that you know you're comfortable that it's been submitted and there's no problems with it.
Yeah, so I think on the next slide, we talk to that a lot. If you
We
want
do, but I think it's really important.
So I guess one other point to that I would say is in like even more than 24 hours, I would say. So if you're new to a show, like let's say I've never applied to the show before, it's one thing if you're familiar with their system, by all means, you can leave it for 24 hours. But if you're new to the show, I would not leave that amount of time. If you have any questions, you can't assume that an event organizer is sitting there waiting to just answer your questions, right? I get this all the time with our shows. It'll be like 11:58 and the show closes at 11:59 and people say, oh, I didn't get it done. I didn't get my submission in, you know, I was on it, like I was in the middle of it and it didn't save, you know, can you extend it for me? And the reality is like, okay, it's Sunday night at 11:58. Like, do you think or like some people will ask questions at 3:30 on a Sunday afternoon, and then they'll send an email at 4:30 in the afternoon, wondering why I haven't gotten back to them. And I'm just saying that most event organizers do not work full time on that event. They're working on multiple events, multiple shows, and they're not there 24/7. They're not working 7 days a week. So
I think it's also really disrespectful. Like if this is the job that you're doing, whether or not you're full-time or a part-time artist, you know, that you need to have a professionalism about you. And part of that is not assuming that because something happened in your life and therefore you couldn't hit the deadline, or you forgot to do it, or the computer crashed. The reality is that's your responsibility, and just, accept the fact that you're responsible for your submission and creating the timing to make sure that you do it properly and have the time if something goes wrong.
Yeah, Kate, I think you cut out there for a bit, or at least for me. I don't know about for other people, but yeah, I think you're just saying like, be respectful of people's time. But I just want to plug there that not everybody works full time, and even our office runs like for our particular organization is not like full days, even Monday to Friday. So just take a look at the organization and be aware that somebody might not be there. Like if that they could be closed on Friday and the submissions are due on Monday, nobody's going to be answering your questions. So
Yeah.
And then some submissions allow you to start it and then go back and edit until you hit a final submit button. So for example, I think the Toronto Outdoors like that, and some other shows. And then once you hit that final submit button, you can't edit. So I would just say proofread, right? Double check your submission, click back. If you're unsure and you're new with it or whatever, click back and then go back forward again and just like save. Almost all submissions do allow you to start it and go back. Most of the submissions I've done the last couple of years, but once you submit, most systems don't allow you to make changes. So just be aware of that.
Yeah. Put your best foot forward.
Mhm.
I think this really, we've probably reiterated this already enough times. Reading the contract, understand what you're getting into, and read the fine print. Take the time to read all this information someone has taken the time to write for you, so that you can make sure you have a really good, strong submission.
Yeah, so I think it's about being professional. And I would say that even for like gallery shows, take the time to read the specifics for that particular show, right?
Yeah. Okay. So this is all part of being care. And I appreciate all this stuff is very administration, but submissions are a part of your admin work. So reading your information carefully. And this is going to sound so stupid, but you can't imagine how many people we have with emails that are written incorrectly, or their first name, last name, where they haven't capitalized them, or they use a different artist name than a business name. And again, often what happens with a lot of these things is the name you put in for your submission is the name that's being then used for the marketing and for the gallery profile and for a bunch of other things too. So just again, take the time to make sure that your email address is accurate and your name is spelled correctly. Sounds stupid, but it happens more often than you'd think.
Yeah, people do that all the time. I had an artist get really upset because their name kept popping up incorrectly, and they said, well, I told you my name was spelled wrong. And I'm like, yeah, you did it wrong on this thing in this profile, and it's carried on, it's built all over these places. I can't capture that. Like, we as an organization can't capture that. It's going to keep coming up. You need to change your profile, right? Like, I don't know. So it's definitely people spell their name wrong. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
So quick,
Social media, like copy and paste the full URL. Sometimes they'll give you examples. So just again, follow the examples that have been given. Some applications require a history of past shows. So again, this is where doing it in Word ahead of time can help you to kind of determine what the most relevant shows are. If you've done a lot of shows, I've probably done over 200 shows, so I'm certainly not going to put that many in, but there are certain ones that are relevant to that particular submission, and those are the ones that I would use to put my best foot forward.
Mhm.
So quick question, if someone has a bit of a difficult time writing their bio or their statements or what have you, what would you advise for
I
that
think
sort of?
the big thing I advise for images as well, and I do this, is actually reach out to other people and see whether or not what they think in terms of does it make sense? Does it sound proper? Is it proper English? Does it communicate what you're trying to communicate? Like, it doesn't have to be done in isolation. And often, especially when you're writing about your own art, you're so close to it that sometimes it is difficult to project something that helps other people understand what you're doing. So it's very helpful for other people to read it.
Yeah, so like go to your tribe. And so I'd say this is a little plug for the Artist Network membership, but we have a closed Facebook group for membership. And I have to say that team in that group there, they're very helpful, like to speak up and help other people. So if you don't have a tribe, get involved with an organization, meet other artists, and develop a network, because those relationships help for all these types of things to get feedback on, and even on submissions. Like Kate and I send each other stuff. We look at each other's stuff, right?
Yeah. And I think we're going to talk about images in a bit, but especially with images, because sometimes, again, too, as an artist, you're so close to your own work. There are times when you kind of go, well, this is so different from that, or this is just so similar. I want to make the
I
application
think,
more
Kate, you're
interesting.
cut out again for me. Kat,
Oh.
is she cutting out for you?
She is, yeah. I can see her, but I
Oh.
can't hear her.
Yeah, so sometimes Kate, your audio's cutting out. I don't know if you're
Okay.
on your earbuds or not, but
No, I'm not. I don't know.
sorry, we didn't catch that last statement you made.
I'm gonna go, hang on 1 second. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm gonna make sure my husband's not playing games or something on our internet. Hang on.
So I think what Kate's really saying is that it's important to kind of like use your network to help get feedback on like images specifically. Sometimes what I've done actually with Kate and with some other artists, we have a small group that chat once a week. But I'll put like a bunch of images even in a folder and say, this is what I'm thinking for the show. They're looking for 6 images. There's 10 images here. And then we just like, somebody might chat and say, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 or something. And so like, sometimes you get feedback for images there, like I'll pop them in a folder and I'll share it, we'll share a folder. So get advice from your colleagues. And also organizations like the Artist Network has education sessions. And a lot of these organizations or will have like, best practices for artist statements. We've done education sessions on this before. But you can also look at other people's statements to get an idea. If you're really new to writing an artist statement, do some research, look at artists that you admire and respect and look at how they write theirs, the tone that they use. An artist statement is usually, a bio is done.
I think that we've got a bit more information on that coming up too.
Oh, okay, all right, I'll wait.
Just because I knew you were going to question me what that was, and I don't remember because it's on the slide.
Right.
So one of the things that is for more gallery shows and not for outdoor shows is the theme. And the theme is something, again, we see often that people will submit paintings or pieces of art that have nothing to do with the theme. So for gallery shows, the gallery committee spends a lot of time creating a theme that they think is going to be inclusive and allows lots of creativity and opportunity, but also pulls together the show so that when you've got 35 different artists in a show, it's got a cohesiveness to it. So if there is a theme, it's critical that you submit work that reflects that theme. Now, in some cases, it might not be an obvious connection. And so therefore, it's important that you create a thoughtful statement based on how your work does embody that theme. And it might not be obvious to the jurors, but in this particular case, the jurors will look at your work and they will read your statement around your theme. So again, juries spend a lot of time reviewing your statement within gallery shows typically to make sure that it fits that theme and that they can put together an exhibition that's going to be coherent.
Yeah, so I'd have to say what I've seen with the Leslie Grove Gallery often is like people might, like an image might look like it's representative of the theme, the image might, but then they take their blanket artist statement and they drop that in. Well, that's not what the Leslie Grove Gallery is looking for. And that's not what most galleries are looking for. They're looking for a statement that connects that particular piece with the theme, right? They're not looking for how you do your, how you work or what your inspiration is. They're looking for that particular piece and how it fits within the call.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously it comes down to the work. The work obviously has to be kind of good quality, but often, as I said before, often it doesn't get to that point because the photographs of your work and the way your work is presented and the body of work you submit is sometimes so erratic that the juror doesn't have a clue of what's going to actually be showing up in that show. Choosing the right images is critical. We just talked about that. Having other people help you choose them. I would always try and choose another artist to help me pick rather than my family or my friends, because other artists tend to be a little bit more critical in a good way, helping you try and create something that's cohesive. Choose your best images that best represent your work. And if there is a gap, create to it. This is another advantage of starting early. If you kind of say, yeah, I need to have 6 pieces. I've got 5 images that are just awesome. I don't really have a strong 6th one, but I have the time to create a 6th one that will be part of that submission. Am I cutting out or am I okay?
No, you're good. Yep.
Okay, good. Consistency. This is one of those things that often artists will also kind of say, well, I do so many things and I want to show the jury all of the awesome things I can produce. So therefore they might see something they love and they'll let me into the show. What a jury really wants to see is a cohesive portfolio. In some cases, like the Toronto Outdoor, you can actually apply with 2 completely separate portfolios or submissions. So if you're doing 2 different things, figurative and landscape, you can apply with a figurative submission and a landscape submission. But regardless, you should choose to have very consistent. I would categorize that as almost a boring submission. Really similar. Jurors are looking at a lot of pieces. Don't make them do a lot of work. Let them see the work and see it's all the same, and they know what they're going to get, and there's no surprises. It is almost always okay to submit images that have already been sold, unless you're doing something where that specific image you're submitting is going to be in the show. Like a gallery show is more likely to do that. For an outdoor show, it doesn't matter, because the chances as well are that the pieces you have in your submission are not necessarily going to be the ones in your tent, but they need to be representative of that. I find that if there's an opportunity to upload a detail of your work, take that opportunity. Often, again, you have pieces that projected. The paintings are very, especially with large paintings, you can't see always the detail of it, and therefore you lose the opportunity to share a story with the jury that a detail can help you inform the jury better. Submit excellent photos. Understand too, the jury changes every year for every show. So sometimes your work may be awesome. You've done everything right, but it just didn't talk to the particular jury that year. So you may get accepted one year and rejected another year. That's the way it is. And I would just say, try not to take that personally. It's really just that your work wasn't quite what they were looking for at that particular time. Doesn't mean the work's not good. It just means maybe it wasn't the right fit.
Yeah, or if it was a gallery show, it didn't fit as well with the other pieces, or as well with the theme as maybe some of the other pieces that were submitted, right? Like I think sometimes it doesn't mean it's a weak piece.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far?
We've got, just gonna turn my phone here. We've got someone asking if they could submit, or if, you know, an artist can submit images from a previous year's submission to a current show.
Yeah, usually a couple of years, going back a couple of years is fine. I think also within COVID, often what happened is that people, because there wasn't as many opportunities to sell the work and show the work, that some people have older work. But, you know, I don't think that it shows you well if you're showing pieces from 2018, you know, 2017. Because I think the first question a jury is going to ask is, what are you producing now? Like if you haven't produced anything that you think is good enough to show in a submission that's 5, 6, 7 years old, then I think then it raises a question as to how committed you are to being able to fill a full tent.
Yeah, I actually recently had a question like that from an artist who submitted to one of our shows saying, do I have to put the year in? Why do I have to put the year in? And I'm like, it informs the jurors. It does, right? It's important. Like most shows do ask for the year of your work. And that's fine. They want to see that you're current and you're active. And some shows only ask you to submit and it worked from the last 2 years, you know?
Yeah. I would say that's a good policy. I wouldn't personally submit anything that was older than 2 years.
How about when it comes to submitting your images and having them photographed? Would you suggest having them professionally photographed, or?
We're moving on to that right now.
Okay, perfect. Here we go, segue.
Do you want to take this one, Ange?
Sure. Photos are important. We all know, because that's what the jurors are going to see, right? And I think sometimes it's very difficult to photograph your work well. I find that often, like I'm at an encaustic, so sometimes encaustic is hard to photograph, but you're going to do the best job that you can. I've done photographs from my iPhone. I've done them from camera, and I've actually just started to get some of my work scanned in. So I think you can consider all those things. Obviously, if you're having difficulty and your photos are not high enough resolution and they're not representative of your work, you really do want to consider going to a professional photographer if you can't do it yourself, or scanning your work in, just to get a good body of work that you can then submit for your submissions. So it's not necessary, but if you're having a hard time yourself doing it, then you want to consider that.
I think it also, especially if the more representational you are, the more that the photograph will already inform what you do. If you're doing things that are more abstract or very textural, or like in caustic, there's a luminosity to it that a bad, or even if it's an average photograph isn't going to capture, you're just not giving yourself a fair chance of actually getting accepted.
In doing that, some of the things that you're going to consider are lighting it appropriately. Kate, is this on another slide or is it just?
Yeah,
on
it
the-
is. So this is funny, but kind of not funny, because we have seen submissions that are like this with people's feet in them, you know, with the glare on the varnish, so you can't really see the picture, you know, sitting on an easel or something where you're kind of going, so is it a painting of a painting on an easel, or is it just a really badly cropped photo? So don't do any of this. Yeah, so in taking a good photo, use a tripod. Even if you're using your camera phone, it's good to use a tripod, and it's good to use your timer to avoid any shaking. If you are using your phone as opposed to a camera, make sure you go in and you set the resolution as the highest, best resolution you can. With phones, you can either choose to have lots of photos at a lower resolution or fewer photos at a higher resolution. And the default is often low. So you're going to have to go in there and change that yourself on your own phone. Hang your work flat on a white wall, level to the lens. That means you're not going to get any weird distortions or light areas and dark areas. And then you're going to have to edit in Photoshop or Elements or whatever if that's required. For lighting, I think, you know, Angela and I both typically do ours outdoors on a kind of a bright overcast day. That gives you a really nice, even, flat, bright lighting. Or you can shoot by a bright window as long as you don't create shadows of where the light's coming in and where the light is not coming in. This diagram here shows your typical setup if you're going to be using lights at 45 degrees to the angle to the camera, in line with the camera. If you have an umbrella to diffuse the light, that is awesome. If not, you can just basically take floor lamps and cover them with white sheets to kind of create a more diffuse light. But as Angela said, sometimes if the work is difficult to photograph, you might be better off having somebody to photograph it for you professionally.
Yeah. So what I do is I actually have I have screws that I screwed into part of my balcony outside, and I hang up my art and make sure it's not moving, and I put a camera on a tripod.
Yeah,
And
I
I
do
do
that too.
Yeah, outside on an overcast bright day, like Kate said, works the best for most work. So it'll take the glares off. It does with encaustic. My photos are a little bit flat, but I think for most artwork, that would be the best way to photograph it. Kate, also with resin work, you want to photograph the work before it's resined, if possible, unless you have somebody to really photograph. You probably have to go to a photographer otherwise to get that done. So I think
Or that's when you have to use the umbrella lamps. You have to use a lamp that has a diffuser on it.
Yeah, so I think you need to, depends on your medium, but photographing your work is important.
So we do have a session coming up on Wednesday, the 8th with David McClymont. So it is $25 for non-members, free for members. And he goes through a very, very practical how-to guide of how to photograph your work using camera as well as your iPhones. So he goes right into the f-stops and how to structure it, how to set it up, how to light it, how to then document it. So if you're interested in that, then that is definitely something that I think everybody can benefit from. That's on the Artist Network website under education. You can sign up for that. You were starting to talk about this, Angela, and I cut you off. So if you wanted to kind of take it away.
I think we talked quite a bit about this, but I think it's just like be aware of the specific shows guidelines in regards to the length, because sometimes it will actually cut it off. But I have to say some programs don't cut it off, but they're still asking for a length. I would still try to be respectful of that. Like look at the guidelines of what they're looking for, because people are going to stop reading. So if your most important statement is way deep down in a statement, that's not the most important place to put it. So edit it, have a friend review it, look at the length. Most submissions, the length is very short, right? It's pretty short. It's really to give a sense of who you are as an artist and your inspiration. I think that different shows are looking for different things, but a lot of shows will ask or will look for, tell me, it's somewhere in that statement, it should say what your medium is, unless your medium is clearly asked for outside of that. You should at least tell people what you're doing, like what your work is, because sometimes it's not actually clear on a photograph, right? And then also make sure that you tell them a little bit about your inspiration and who you are as an artist. Really for ours, I think this short statement for promotion, this specifically for our shows, is really, we ask for a short statement. Some on our particular submission form, you'll have your one statement that the jurors see, but we also ask for this short promotional statement right away within it, so you can think of that. It can be sort of repetitive. The jurors don't even see that one, so that's specific to the Artist Network submissions, and we want to have a statement so that we can promote you in the show. So it's in the event that you're accepted into the show, we want a promotional statement. Some of the shows might be asking you for a booth image with no identifying signage. So I know that there's some shows that ask for that. So it's important to actually take pictures of yourself at shows in a clean booth. And I would just like take care to look for that. Some shows, even if you don't have booth statements, like if you're new and you want to still do that, they'll allow you to set up an improv, like a kind of like just a gallery view of like a wall of some of your work, and they let you take a picture of that. I think Toronto Outdoor asked for that, right, Kate? The booth shot.
And also I think the One of a Kind does as well. So what I actually do is I kind of get into the habit of if I'm setting up my tent and I get it to the point where it's not fully set up, but it looks good and it's got lots of breathing space and my name is not up yet, I will just get into the habit of taking photographs so that I have a number of booth shots that don't have my name in them, that aren't overpacked with art, that look really professional, that I can just kind of pull from a file when I need them.
Yeah, sometimes some of the shows actually even like it if one of the images that you have in your submission is one of the images of the art that's actually in the booth shot. I think that that actually does help them kind of see how it fits within an organization, and it also gives them frame of space. So the booth shot should always show part of the floor and part of the top. So it's not just a wall with some paintings on it. So if you step back a tiny bit so that you can kind of get the frame of like, is your work large? Is it small? Is it like, how does it fit? And how are you presenting yourself? I would say keep the booth clean. What I've done with my booth shot for in the past is I was in the One of a Kind show, and I set up my booth really, really clean. One of a Kind is one of those shows where you can have some walls with a little bit more art, but I didn't hang up all my art, took some booth shots, changed out my art with a different series of work, put that up, took pictures, and then I set my booth up for the show. And I did that just so I'd have booth shots. So,
So
Does anybody have
quick
any
question.
questions?
So a couple. So basically, let's say, for people who don't have a history of doing past shows, so they wouldn't have a booth shot. They're completely new to, completely emerging, completely new, and may feel a bit, not intimidated, but just sort of, how do you go about approaching shows? I guess you just you just kind of go ahead and do it, whether you've got previous experience or not. And how important is it to have previous shows in your CV when you're putting through some applications?
I think it's a very secondary, like I think that I don't think that there's any shows where that is a critical factor, unless you're doing something like some of these shows. If I did, I don't know, like Art San Diego, they would probably ask for that. But chances are that's probably not the first show you're ever going to do. I think really a lot of it is if you go through and you really meticulously read through everything and follow those rules, it doesn't matter if you haven't done other shows before, because the submission itself will look professional. And as Angela mentioned before, for the Toronto Outdoor, which does require a booth shot, if you haven't done a booth before, I know artists who have actually borrowed a tent and set up a booth shot, or they can take two walls in their home that are white and hang the shot and do it like that. Again, this is where, I know that Toronto Outdoor also does a boot camp, which shows you how to do some of those things. The Artist Network internal Facebook page has a lot of information and a lot of support where those questions can be pretty easily answered, because a lot of artists who've been doing this for a long time will have those answers off the top of their head. So I would say, don't hesitate to reach out to people and ask them some of those questions.
yeah, and I think past shows is only one of the things they might be looking at. Like most shows will ask for your Instagram or your website. So I'd say try to make those platforms up to date. and at least have information, additional information on them. I know that sometimes when jurors have a hard time and they're not sure about an artist, I know that some shows actually do look at your social presence, and we don't really do that with our shows. But if we're having a hard time figuring out an artist, like we really want to try to give them an opportunity because the work looks really good, but there's something that's confusing on their submission. I have pulled up stuff and clarified stuff for jurors before. So I think, you know, make sure your website's up to date, make sure your social is up to date and representative of you as an artist.
And I think if you really are going to be moving into becoming a serious artist, then you need to have your own Instagram page that's committed to your art. It's also kind of a little bit frustrating when you see a statement that's not quite put together. You know, the art is good. Then you go to their Instagram, there's a whole bunch of pictures of their dog and a bunch of stuff, which doesn't really feel like they're that committed to the art. So, you know, if you want to have a personal Instagram and social, that's cool, but I would sort of suggest having one that's really primarily your art.
And then sort of the different, okay, one thing we didn't really, the difference between an artist, your biography and your artist statement is once the bio is third person and your artist statement is more personal, talks, and it's in first person, you write that first person and it focuses more about your vision and your current work. Like you might say this, my current body of work is this, and I, you know, like you talk a little bit more about your vision. I think if you go online and you do searches and stuff, you'll be able to see samples, examples and stuff. And if you go visit other people's websites, often there are artist statements there, their bios on their website. So it gives you a flavor of how people write them.
Yeah, I would say too, it doesn't have to be like a lot of artist statements are so complicated that it's actually hard to really understand what the vision is. Like use clear language the way you would talk about your art. Like talk about the vision, talk about your inspiration, talk about why you do what you do. But, you know, you don't need to create an artist statement where people don't understand half of the words that are in it.
One more question regarding the booth, just to sort of close that up. Should the artist be in the shot of the booth, or
No.
should it just be the work? Okay.
Just
Just
the
the
word.
word.
The goal for most of these is that they're jurying blind. So they don't have your name, they don't have your information. So that's the other thing too. Don't rely on the fact that, well, I'm a well-known artist, therefore I'm going to get in, because they don't know who the work is. So they just have the art and they have the booth shot. And so you're not allowed to have any identifying features within that. I've also heard it said that even you shouldn't even have your signature on your paintings really large, because that's kind of, again, it's swaying the jury.
Interesting. Okay.
Results. So I think it's hard for people to hear that they got rejected, but I do think that it's also part of the learning experience. So if you were accepted, congratulations, that's awesome. Most of these shows are pretty competitive, and so you should pat yourself on the back and be proud of the fact that you got in. And then make sure that you read the terms and fulfill your responsibilities as a showing artist. And this comes down again to the professionalism, which we have probably hammered to death, but it's kind of, you know, if you have questions, read the information that's provided before reaching out to the organizers. Make yourself an easy artist to work with. Start promoting as soon as possible. It's also your responsibility as well as the show organizers to actually promote that show, get out there to as many people as possible. And it's part of your responsibility to also do that. You can't rely on the shows to do all the marketing for you, especially if you're just starting out. It's a good opportunity to piggyback on the other artists that are doing those shows and to be able to kind of build your own social presence. Some shows have a wait list, and what that really means is they put out their first list of people that are accepted. At that point, people can say, yes, I do want to do the show, or no, I've changed my mind, I don't want to do it. So there's usually a bit of a slush there for people that something happens to them, they get COVID, they can't do the show, and then the wait list, you're often numbered on the wait list, and then you will be kind of called up when there might be a space available. One of the things for that is you need to potentially be ready to move quite quickly. I first got into the Artist Project because I was on the wait list, and they told me 3 days before the show started that I had a space because one guy couldn't get across the border. He got stopped at the border. So that is very stressful to have 3 days to put the whole thing together. So if you are on a wait list and you are bound and determined to do the show, which I would strongly recommend. Just kind of say, hey, I'm here, willing to do the show. Just start to do a little bit of planning ahead of time so that if you are called at the last minute, you do have some sort of ability to be prepared and step up to the plate. If you're rejected, it could be that there was just an awful lot of submissions. It could be that the work just isn't quite there yet for emerging artists. That is sometimes the case. Some organizations will share the jury's thoughts with their submissions, and some won't. And the reason for that is often artists get really upset with the critique that comes back. So if you're going to ask a juror to share the thoughts of the jury on your submission because you were rejected, I would just say that you should probably try and step back and take it as a learning experience. This happened to me when I first started, and they kind of said, yeah, the work is great, but it's not finished properly. The edges don't look strong, so it's like the presentation isn't quite tight. And so it's like, okay, that was helpful. Now I know that that's important. And now that's something I can rectify for the next show. So use it as a vehicle to learn and continually improve. Is there anything you want to add to this, Ange?
No, I think that's great. Lots of good information.
Okay. Are there any more questions before we move on to our specific Artist Network shows? We must be doing an awesome job then.
No, we did have one come through. There's actually someone who's curious about seeing any samples of artist statements. Because she's
often you can go on, for example, if you go to the One of a Kind website, I think there's shows like that where the artist profiles will often have an artist statement.
I guess it's more of a perspective of she is a writer, and I guess it's more about what it is exactly that would be considered good, a good artist statement versus a not so good artist statement.
I think a lot of it is that there's actually thought put into it, like and that you're really trying to share what at the core of your being is compelling you to be an artist and create this art. Like, what is the vision of what you're trying to do and the inspiration? One of the other things I've heard that it's really powerful too is that what do you want the viewer to get out of it? Like, what are you hoping to be able to communicate to the viewer? There's a lot of, we are probably going to be doing a session on how to write an artist statement, but there's an awful lot of information on the website that you should.
On different, like on the internet, you mean like different if you do a search. But I think I would say I would just go to professional artists who are professional artists who've been showing for a while. They're really strong artists that you admire. I would go look at their websites. Almost every artist website has a bio and an artist statement.
Yeah.
Definitely, it'll at least minimal have an about section about the artist that is basically sort of their about, might be a little bit of a bio artist statement mix. But if you actually go delve into some of the websites, I would just look at some of the artists that you actually appreciate. Like, who do you see showing professionally at galleries and at these outdoor shows? If you've walked around, and like, who do you appreciate as an artist, and go look at their sites.
Yeah. And, it's helpful too, to go and look at artists whose work is similar to yours. So if I'm an abstract painter, going and looking at a realism photographer might not help you so much in trying to figure out at least the sense of what I'm trying to do with an artist statement.
But I think
Also for fun, you should also go to Google artist statement generator, and there's some programs that can actually create some super funny artist statements that are really pretentious and kind of hilarious, just as a blast. Did that answer the question, hopefully?
Let's see.
She said no.
No, it didn't answer the question.
I don't think there's a formula. I don't think there's
No.
first sentence has to have this, second sentence this, third sentence this, because every.
Can I ask it, please?
Sure.
Because it wasn't communicated clearly. I really wanted to know what you particular look for and like, because I've done all of that. I've looked at them all, I've read them. They all suck as far as I'm concerned. They're all written in Bafflegab. It's like writing any kind of grant. It's just blah, blah, blah nonsense. And so I can write blah, blah, blah nonsense, or I can write something clear and concise, but usually they're just not good. And I'm sitting there going, well, I don't know what it is that somebody really wants to see that's going to go, oh, that's it. And when you say, well, what's your vision? What's your art? Why do you paint? I paint because I can't not. Boom, that's it. I paint things because they look nice. I like to make pretty things. And I've had someone say that's not enough. You have to say, like, why is joy important? Why is it important? And I'm thinking, oh, screw you, right?
Well, I
didn't
think
get
I
that
agree,
way.
Helene. I think it
TMI.
is a little, I think it is a little bit of a game. And this is why the artist statement generator is kind of hilarious, because honestly, I've seen artist statements that are very similar to that. And like you say, you can't even really read them. You can't understand them. Most, especially most outdoor shows and stuff, the artist statement is actually more of a brief blurb about what your practice is, what your medium is, why you're doing what you're doing.
Everybody agree? See, this is why people don't get ahead, because you guys don't know what enough is. You know, to me, enough is I can take care of me, my wife, my kids, my charity, my teachers, my teacher system.
Hey, Adam.
Barb, can you mute that?
Hey.
Sorry? I'm sorry, I'm kind of confused. I don't know who's talking now.
Sorry, I think that was just somebody wasn't muted.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, but I think somebody just wasn't muted. It wasn't the person who asked the question, I don't think.
I think the other thing is an artist statement changes. Like my artist statement now is not the same as it was 2 years ago or 5 years ago or when I first started, right? And so I think that it does get a bit more, maybe a bit more sophisticated as you become more easily able to articulate what you're producing.
I would say, I'm just going to speak up here for the specific outdoor shows, like when the juror looks at the outdoor shows, the first thing they're going to see is sort of your medium and specifically what you're actually presenting at the show and your images, right? So the first thing the jurors are going to do, look at the images. If they have questions about what they're looking at, they're going to look more carefully at your statement. They'll probably skim over the statement initially. So they're looking for, are you telling me who you are? And our statements need to be very short, or for our submissions, we want them to be short. What I don't think they appreciate is when you basically copy your entire artist blurb, like a whole page, and just drop it in there. So-and-so's like, and use your artist statement for the submission as a bio. They don't want to see that you were born here, you've done this, I've been here. That's for our particular shows. Like they're not looking at that. They don't want to read a really long bio. They want a short statement that says, I'm an acoustic artist that loves to share joy in my work, and like be specific, maybe something about my process if it's unique, or something about the collection that I'm currently working on. My current collection is about connections in blah, 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 right? So I think it's a short statement that can answer questions. If they need more than that, they can ask the event organizer. If they're unsure, they'll leave a note. For us particularly, the jurors have an opportunity to question something and leave a note and say, I don't understand the submission. I would need clarity from the artist, or can you share their website or something like that? And then I might give somebody clarity if they're like, they love the work, but they don't quite understand it. That's our particular shows. Our jurors shows for the jurors for the Leslie Grove Gallery shows, they're specifically looking for a statement that talks to the theme. So what they don't want is for you to copy and paste your big long bio or your big long artist statement and just drop it in there. They don't want to read that. They want to read why this piece is a good fit for this show.
Yeah.
They'll answer that question.
So unfortunately, there's not a nice clear-cut answer. We can't kind of go to this website and fill in the blanks and it'll give you one. But I think you just have to kind of just start to work around it until it feels comfortable. So since there's so many emerging artists and so many new artists, I'm assuming these are people that are potentially new members. So just want to do a quick blurb about the Artist Network. We are not-for-profit, have been around for over 25 years, and we create, as people probably know, Riverdale Art Walk and Art Walk in the Square. We also run the Leslie Grove Gallery. And our mandate really is about trying to help artists with the business of art so that they can be more successful within their practice, either financially or exposure, whatever they choose to do. So it's less about honing your craft of the actual art, because there's a lot of great places you can go for that. And it's more about the business practice. We are a member organization. You do not have to be a member to participate, but there are huge benefits of membership. One is the free education sessions, like the one that, like this one, but also like ones we have in terms of photographing your work, how to get into galleries, how to apply for grants, things like that. We have seminars in the galleries. We also are part of a community. We've got networking sessions. So a very valuable part of that is really being able to build your network. And we do shows at the Leslie Grove Gallery as well that are member shows.
And then I guess an offside to all of that also is that you reduced fees. So for example, these education sessions are free for members, non-members pay a fee. There's reduced rates for some of our, like for our shows. And even for our submissions for our gallery shows, the rates reduced. So that is also another benefit, is reduced fees.
Yeah.
All right, so Riverdale Art Walk's been around for 25 years. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary. Yay! We're really excited about that this year. I'm promoting around our anniversary, but it's an awesome show. I think that so many people have got their start and have really built their practice. They kind of really elevated their presentation as a professional artist. I would say a lot of people got their, maybe not their start, but it really elevated them as an artist, the Riverdale Art Walk. I think it's a top rated show for art lovers and collectors. I think artists, it's in their heart. It's one of their favorite shows, and it's one of my favorite shows because I have the joy of like organizing it every year.
Well, it was definitely the first show I got into, so it was definitely the start of my art career. So I always have a very special place in my heart for Riverdale as well. It's also an awesome community, so it's a fun show to do, I find.
Yeah, it's kind of a great size. So the Riverdale Art Walk is sort of an awesome size. It's not, I mean, for some people, maybe they think it's overwhelming, but I find you can do the show in a day and you can kind of remember where people were in the park if you need to go back. It's not as overwhelming as some shows that kind of get up like over 200 artists. So this year, it's the first, we were moving back to our traditional weekend. So it's going to be the first, it's always the first full weekend in June. So this year that falls June 3rd and 4th. And Art Walk in the Square, the Artist Network is always looking for new initiatives and places to look for opportunities for artists. And one thing that wasn't really being served was the North Toronto area for outdoor shows or for art shows. And so Art Walk in the Square sort of was born out of that need to like look for other new opportunities, new audiences, and like go a little bit further north. So it's North Toronto, and it's a 3-day fine art. We partner with Sea of Shops at Don Mills, and it's just targeting the northern part of the city. So the Friday, so it's 3 days. It runs into Friday night, so it's sort of like it gets like dusk and a little bit dark. So you can see Kate there in her awesome, bright, fun colors, because we try to host, sort of do something a little bit fun and make it a night market. We try to keep as close to mall hours as possible, just to have less distraction moving in and out. And it's kind of a nice opportunity because there's a lot of like a dinner crowd that kind of goes out to Sea of Shops at Don Mills. For those who don't know, it's an outdoor, it's I think the first big outdoor shopping mall in Canada, I think.
Mhm.
And so it's actually transitioned about 4 or 5 years ago into like a sort of higher end shops. And there's a lot of really good restaurants and stuff there. So people do go there as a destination, not only to shop, do their groceries and shop retail, but also to go out at night.
Does anybody have any questions about the 2 outdoor shows?
I know this may be a bit difficult to sort of answer, but as an emerging artist, how many pieces would you suggest to have in a booth? And again, I guess it depends on, whether you do 10 by 10s or large pieces, but what would you?
I always think it's good for a booth to have, not to overpack it. One of the things we often see with emerging artists is that no matter how many pieces they have, they want everything to be up. What ends up happening is that the booth just becomes overwhelming. So I think it is good to curate what you're going to put in the show, have some larger pieces that are going to draw people in, and have some smaller pieces that are easy for people to pick up and buy. So, I mean, I do a lot of small ones, so I probably have, I don't know, 50 pieces in my booth, but I think that for large pieces, I would probably have 3 to 5 large pieces.
Mm-hmm. So I would say, I would agree with that. And it depends. Some shows you have like this sort of extra outside wall, and we try to do that at Shops at Don Mills. So that might give you another wall to present like one big piece. An example would be on my back wall, I have 3 pieces of art. And then my side walls, I might look at different price points and like showcasing different size art. So if you're an emerging artist thinking, should I apply to a show? Do I have enough work? I've seen people do a show with 4 pieces of art in their booth before, right? They're launching a new series of work. Maybe they're a little bit more established, but I think you want to make sure you have enough work in different price points for these outdoor shows. So I would say at least 1 big piece would be great to ground your booth at the back.
Yeah. And then you can see that picture of me, those are little 6-inch by 6-inch paintings. So they're kind of that fast impulsive buy that you want to probably try and do as well.
Yeah, and if you
And-
look at Kate behind her booth, you can see there's a piece there and there's quite a bit of white around that piece. She probably has, that's probably her back wall, and she probably has 3 pieces on that wall, like
Yeah.
a 24 by 24, a 40 by 40, or a 36 by 36, and another 24 by 24, right? You want people to be able to see the work. But again, somebody who might be more established might have a little bit more because the people who are coming, they have their audience that's coming there. But I really think that the cleaner the booth is, the nicer you're presenting your work, the better it looks.
Yeah. And if you do get into any of these outdoor shows, we do a really, and usually Angela and I do a really intensive orientation. And it includes kind of how to hang your booth, how to price it, you know, how you should talk to people about your booth and your marketing and your promotions, and then the logistics of actually how to move in and park and pack your art and stuff like that. Yeah.
And as far as, you know, selling your stuff, having a point of sale square is definitely you know,
Absolutely.
practically a must.
Yeah, so if you do apply to the show and you get in, like Kate says, we have an orientation, we talk about all that stuff in enough
Mhm.
time, maybe not for the painting part of it, but enough time for you to be able to get a square reader and get all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So I think
Okay.
on our submission form, there's actually dates, tentative dates for our orientation. So you could say, okay, this gives me like 6 weeks or 2 months to like prep for the show. I'm happy to answer any of those questions if you want to pop an email specific to the show in regards to what we recommend. But I would say, yes, you want to have a point of sale. You want to make it easy for people to purchase.
And I would say there's no reason not to just get one sooner than later. Like there's at least gives you a little bit of an opportunity to, you know, to play with it and make sure it works for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've used my point of sale here at home, like my home studio. Someone's come to
Yeah.
my studio, visit me, and they bought a piece, right? Or people do e-transfers. I found through COVID, a lot of people did e-transfers, but I think it's going back. I found like I did a lot of e-transfers, and now people are back to doing like credit cards.
Yeah.
And the outdoor shows are outdoor only this year, right? So there isn't
Correct.
an
Right.
online? Okay.
Yes.
There's no online and there's no indoor portion. Riverdale it sometimes has indoor portions, but that's not happening this year either.
Okay.
So the other property that the Artist Network manages, oops, as you can see, I didn't sub out the photographs. Sorry about that. It's the Lesser Grove Gallery. So the Lesser Grove Gallery is owned by and run by the Artist Network. And it's designed to empower artists through education and a range of diverse and inclusive exhibit opportunities. This is especially good for emerging artists when you might not have a full body of work, but you want to start to have show experience. You want to start to see how your work responds to people. And so by applying to a show, you can have 1 or 2 pieces that actually get in the show. It allows you to start to build your marketing and again, build your network. You can
Yeah,
rent the space for your own personal show, or you can just work with group shows that have themes. Sorry.
Yeah, so all of our shows have group themes, except for usually at the end of the year, we have like a holiday show. We have traditionally had that for 2 years now, where it's not necessarily themed, but otherwise pretty much it's themed.
Yeah.
So right now we have Hello Yellow going on. It's an awesome show.
It is awesome. Yes. Why do the Artist Network shows? Partially, I think that it's run by artists for artists. So we have all been in your place where, you know, you're thinking about embarking on your art career, you're an emerging artist, you've never done any of this before. We remember how scary it was. And so therefore, as an organization, everybody who's on the board is a showing artist, and we try as best as possible to help make this experience fabulous and successful and not stressful. So I'm going to just kind of scoot through because we got a lot of other things to go through. Juried. Do you want to talk about the jurying, Ange?
Well, this just says, why are they juried? I guess it's really to make sure that it's a professional show, that we have a fairly high quality show where I think it's also to help artists, right? So if you look like if the juror feels like you'd be able to show, so we do have a lot of emerging artists at our shows. Specifically, I think Art Walk in the Square, we had a lot last year. And I would say it's really a great opportunity for artists, but if you have cohesive body of work and we feel like you're ready to show, I think that's the most important. If you're, often I'll hear jurors make comments like, oh, it looks like student work. And it's because somebody's put in as many different pieces in their submission as possible. So it almost looks like a student portfolio where this week I did this, that next month I'm doing this, and next month I'm doing this. And they try to mix it all up and show all these great things that they've done. So that's really, you wouldn't get into a show. You're not going to get into these outdoor shows, whether it's our show or somebody else. You want to show a cohesive body of work. And that's why we have jurors. So what the jurors are looking for is technique. So how proficient is the work, the originality, does your work stand out? Is it a good fit for the show? Consistency, with all the pieces, we talked quite a bit about that. And then for gallery shows, basically how it fits in the theme, and modify your artist statement to adhere to that. Sometimes they'll look at your websites, but that's not mostly the case with our shows. It's mostly what you're actually presenting. And then jurors for the art walks, they also have like this, basically an overall impression of the artist. So they're looking at your statement and your work and everything. Are they ready to present? And on a scale of 1 to 20, how ready? Like how much do they think that artist deserves to be in the show? That's really what they're doing. So they actually, on the art walks, the jurors have another like open category where it's basically they're like an objective view of whether they think that artist is hitting all the points that they'll have a successful show. They want to make sure if you're in the show, you're going to have a successful show, that you're ready for it.
Yeah. And the other part too is that as an organization, it's our responsibility to be able to bring buyers and collectors and art lovers to that show. And so therefore, we want to maintain that reputation of having artists that are varied. There's lots of different types of art. There's different mediums, but that the quality of the art is all high.
Yeah. So sometimes our jurors do carry over. They've done multiple years. So it'll be mixed. They might not do a year, then they might come back, but we almost always have new jurors on our jurying platform every year.
I think this is more specifically about the images that the Artist Network requires for our outdoor shows. So we require 6 images. I think all of this stuff really has been well documented within the criteria, but again, the file size is important. For the Artist Network stuff, it's really, really important to name your files the right name. Otherwise, it's just difficult for us to manage. And again, it's just shows a little bit of sloppiness in terms of your commitment to putting together a first-rate submission.
Yeah, so really it's just first name, last name, so that if we do need to pull the images for promotional use, it's easy for us. So what happens is part of the submission process is you give us the right to use your images for promotion. And so what we do is I actually go in, and all the accepted artists, I export all their images. And so if it doesn't have your name on it, it's not going to be used in any promotion. Like I can't tag you, I can't manage and recognize the artist when we're using your imagery. And so that's why it's first name, last name. The jurors don't actually see that, but they don't see your name when they're jurying you, and they don't see any of your personal information, but it's more for promotional purposes. Fees. So I just say, understand that our submission fee and our participation fee. So our submission fee is a flat $50 fee. That's just for submitting, that's non-refundable. And then we have our participation fee. So we have different rates depending on when you submit. And I would say that the submission fee, the way that we do the participation fee, there's no refunds on that either, because we actually have a deposit, which is basically saying, yes, I'm going to be in the show. I think it's $150, $175. Yes, I'm going to be in the show. And that's pretty soon after you get your acceptance, because we want you to be committed, right? I don't want to then you back out of the show later on, and I could have given that a spot to somebody on the wait list, and then now you back out the show a week before the event and a spot, right? So that is your commitment to be in the show. And then much closer to the event, then we invoice you for the balance of your fee. And so it's close enough to the event that if you ask for a refund, that would be the date you would get a refund on that. We just are asking for that money later on. So that fee again is non-refundable. Once you pay that fee, it's not. The Artist Network takes no commissions on sales for outdoor shows. So you need to understand the terms and conditions for other shows, but we don't take any commissions. We do take a commission at the Leslie Grove Gallery for our group shows for those, and it's much lower than many galleries, but anyway. So here's so you can see the member and non-member, that there's where you get your discounts. And also what our shows, we have an early bird deadline that's coming up. It's February 6th. So if you're able to get your submissions in by then, that's a really great way to save on your submission fees. That just helps us understand and be able to jury and get stuff done sooner. So that's why we have an early bird. It's much better for us if we have a good idea of how many people we have in the show. So I encourage you to get your early bird submissions in, and then you'll see that the member to non-member rate is basically kind of like $100 off. So it's basically $100 more as you progress through everything. So you can see our submission fee is anywhere from $395 to $645. So it's a big variation whether you're early and a member versus a non-member and very late.
Yeah, we always recommend, again, especially for emerging artists or first-time artists, that take advantage of the membership and pay the I think it's $170 or something for membership. It gives you so many more benefits, but you can see here, if you're looking at doing a couple of shows, then it's going to pay for itself already.
Yeah, and so I see a discrepancy here on the dates. It says applications closed Monday, March 13th, and then here,
Oh.
regular submission Monday, March 20th. So I don't, there might be a typo on the website, but it's the 13th. I'm pretty sure it's the Monday, the 13th.
Yeah. I think it is too.
So I'll have to go in and edit the website if you take.
Good eye. Okay, we're getting close to 8:30, so I think we can kind of scoot through this fairly quickly, but because all this stuff is again part of the process, but
Yeah, so just very briefly, I guess, the submission process we use is on Eventiny. It's really easy to create a profile first. You don't have to do a lot. It's basically email and a password, right? And then you can go in and make a submission. But you will then have to set up a general profile, like it's going to ask you for some business information, like where you're living and all that sort of stuff. So, but it's pretty easy. You do not have to set up the Stripe account and do all that stuff because we're not doing an online portion. We're not hosting the show online as in previous years.
results,
Yeah, through email, you'll get an email from me.
probably around what, the middle of April?
The dates are on the
website.
website. I usually give it 2 or 3 weeks for the jurors. So,
Yeah.
and then we have to deliberate after we get all the juror results in. So the website has all the dates. Sorry, I just can't remember the dates off the top of my head.
Well, everything should be on the website, right? So, okay, and that's, I think
Typo.
yeah, I think we pretty much talked about this as well. The other thing too is with our shows, I have to say Angela does an awesome job of communication. Everything is in a handbook. And so again, as an emerging artist, that handbook is kind of your Bible, where if you have any questions, you don't know how to do things, you need links to Facebook pages, you don't remember the orientation, you need links on how to set up an Eventiny profile, all that stuff will be in the handbook. So.
Yeah, and I just like to say, don't be discouraged if you are waitlisted. We almost always accept people off of our wait list. I don't think I've ever done a year where we haven't accepted anybody off of our wait list, because things happen, right? People's plans change, and sometimes people get sick, or sometimes just like events happen in people's lives and they have to cancel out of the show. So I think don't be discouraged. It happens all the time. Some people get accepted in the show and then they've made other plans for the year.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Looks like we are at the end.
Yep, but we're happy to, well, certainly I want to say good idea coming, at least understanding what you need to do to produce a really good submission, and good luck with it.
Oh,
But
there's a
we're happy to
question.
stay if there's any other questions.
So there's a question here about jurors for both shows the same. No, they're not. No, a lot of our jurors can't, like we have so many submissions that it's a lot to kind of go through both shows. We might have one juror that does both shows. So we have a minimum of 3 jurors for each show, and they're usually not the same people.
Yeah. In terms of transportation from the booth to your car, that will change depending on where you're located in the park and which show you're doing. So again, all of that will be very detailed or information you'll get in the orientation. So I guarantee you, if you're in, you will know exactly how you're going to get your stuff from your car to your booth.
Carts, lots of carts.
Yeah.
Lots of friends, hands.
You carry it all.
Yeah.
The fun schlepping part of the show.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Pre-show
Oh.
schlep.
It'd be great to have like an art minion, just
So
do
someone says,
is it-
is it one application for both outdoor shows? No, absolutely not. It's 2 applications. They're separate shows, separate applications, separate. They're totally separate.
separate submission fee. So they're each $50 for each submission. Is there anything
Can I
else?
ask Can I
Yeah.
ask a question? Sorry, I don't have my camera on. I do apologize. How are
That's okay.
you? Thank you for that information. So this, it would be my first time to apply. What I want to know is there like a certain theme that we have to go by, or like how do we go about what we're going to present for the booth?
Did you ask if there's a certain theme?
Yeah.
Not for the outdoor shows. So the outdoor shows really are about you showing your work and making sure that the application is consistent.
Okay, so consistent meaning like it's the same, like I choose a theme and it's kind of like
It's a consistent body of work that is very clear that one artist created all the work and you can really see the same style and consistency of the work. So all the subject matter might not have to be the same, but it needs to be consistent and look like it looks like one artist. I would recommend that it be as consistent as possible. So take your best work and do 6 consistent pieces.
A lot of
Okay.
times artists will think that they're putting together a consistent portfolio and it looks really boring. So then they try and add some different things to make it more interesting. But the reality is that what the jury is looking for is that when they look at your application, they have a really good sense of what they're going to see in that booth if you get accepted.
So
so the consistency, is it by the technique or by the style of, like, let's say the subject matter itself? Because for example, I normally do portraits, but sometimes I use all the time I do acrylics, but sometimes I do use, for example, the knife, sometimes I just the brush, sometimes I do pointing, that's kind of style. So is it the technique that has to be unified?
I
Or
would
does
say
it
your
matter?
style should be consistent.
Yeah,
I'm
and
sorry,
I
what?
would say it's probably better if you can have the style and the technique be consistent. Not having seen your work, what I would suggest is actually show it to other people, your friends, and kind of say, does this look like it's the same artist? Because often where artists can see things either being very different or very similar. I ran into this just really recently. I thought I was having similar work and everyone said, oh, it's so different. I think someone else who's not quite so connected to your work has sometimes an easier way of being able to kind of go, that looks like it's a different artist. Those two look like they go together.
Yes, Kate
Mhm.
came up with a new collection and didn't know it.
Yeah.
Kate, it's a new collection, is it? I don't think it is. Yes, it is.
I didn't think it was. I thought it was the same as the old one, but
So I would also recommend, so I'm just going to put this out there. So you could do more than one submission. So you're able to do 2 submissions on our platform as well, and for the same show. And I have had an artist consistently for many, many years, not last year, she didn't come to our show, but for many years, she actually asked for 2 booths because she had 2 very different types of work. So it's not just for the jurors and to say, yes, you're a successful artist and you have a consistent body of work, but think about the end audience. What we're doing is we're putting together a show that gives you an opportunity to showcase your work, and you're presenting your work to an audience, and they're not going to want to buy or to engage with you if they don't really understand you as an artist. So your booth should represent you as an artist and should be like cohesive, and it's very clear to see, oh, Angela, like people come into my booth and said, oh, you do all blues and you do all this quiet, serene stuff, because I didn't want to mix my other collections in my booth, right? I didn't want to confuse my audience. So I think it's important to think about how you present yourself. So this particular audience, our artist had 2 different bodies of work, and I gave her 2 booths right beside each other. So she could actually manage both booths with extra help. And she presented herself in 2 different booths. So she's done that for many, many years at the Riverdale Art Walk.
Okay, and the submission deadline for the early bird, is it
the 6th.
is it with just the application, or do we have to submit also the pieces, like the art pieces?
The images are part of the application. So the application will be your art.
Yeah. So once you hit submit, you can't go back in and edit your submission. So if you're not ready, then I would just also say, if you're not ready, don't stress about it. Then just hit the regular submission fee. Don't get into the late submission fees. Just hit the regular submission fee, which is mid-March, right?
Okay.
But if you are ready, don't procrastinate and miss the opportunity to do the
That's
early bird. That's really what we're saying.
Okay, and that's the two pieces you said, right?
I think it's 5 or 6.
6
Oh.
6 pieces, 6 images. So if you
Okay.
go on to the Artist Network website, you'll see all the different criteria and all the details for the show on that site.
Okay, and I know it took a lot of time, but when I arrived late to that, you were guys talking about the statement. Would it be possible to connect with either of you after that, just to get a little bit more understanding about the artist statement?
Yeah, sure. You can send me an email at angela@artistnetwork.ca and leave your phone number and I'll give you a call.
Angela, Artist Network, right?
Or Angela at artists with an S network.ca.
Okay, great. Thank you, Angela.
So
Thank you,
someone
ladies.
asked that artist who had two different booths, so they have to do two submissions? Yes, for sure. It's two separate bodies of work. They look very different. And she did two submissions and then she has two booths.
It was pretty awesome though.
Her work's great. I bought one of her pieces this year. Yay.
Okay.
Any more
think that-
questions?
I think we're nearing the end of the list.
Mirjana, did you have a question?
Sorry, Ed, I'm sorry, I'm not typing. I'm afraid I don't type fast enough. And
That's okay.
I'm just curious the name of this artist with the two different styles, because I'd love to see how different the styles are.
So one was painting and one was ink work. One was ink drawing.
More
and one was
about
painting.
technique, right?
Yeah, so totally different medium, totally different technique. So she did painting and then she also did like ink drawing and then did resin on some of her ink drawing. So they look very different.
I don't think you'd actually.
I
even-
think most people who walked by assumed it was two different artists.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
Yeah, so like if you do landscape and you have some floral, it can be in the same booth. Maybe your application is dream. So I would say, and I don't want to open up a can of worms, but I have had artists say to me, I did my submission with this. I've been working on, like, especially right now, Art Walk in the Square is more than 6 months away. I've done this and I have this collection. I think it's very similar and similar feel because we expect you to present the work. And I do go around and look at booths to present the work that you presented in your submission, right? That you're presenting your own work and it's what your submission was. Similar. So you don't have to have those pieces in your booth. Obviously, you may have sold them. Hopefully you sold them by then, but that same look and feel. But like if you have some landscapes, you can put some floral and it's the same look and feel of the piece and the same kind of technique. That's fine. And if you're questioning it, you can reach out and ask me later on. Like someone said, oh, I have a new collection. Is this the same? And I'm like, yeah. I can see that's the same artist. Yeah, you're fine. Put that in your booth. Like, don't worry about that.
David?
Yeah, Angela, I did submit to the Art Walk in Don Mills, the application, the
Yep.
$50 submission fee. Did I miss something on the larger fee?
Oh,
No,
the
you
larger
haven't been
fee-
accepted yet.
Yeah, so the larger fee, so once you get accepted, that larger fee will be invoiced to you. So we'll send an invoice through the
That's what-
system
okay,
to you. So you don't pay that until you get accepted into the show, David.
That's what I thought. I
then-
just, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I think within a couple of days after your acceptance goes out, we'll send that invoice out. And then you don't have a long time to pay for that. It's, I think, about $150 or $175, depending if you're a member or non-member. And then that just secures your spot in the show.
Okay, no, sorry about that. I just got a little confused. Thank you.
I will say, if you don't pay, then I'll be offering your spot to a waitlist artist.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. It doesn't look like there is anything trickling in at this point. So I
Awesome.
think we are at the end.
Good. I know we went a little over, but thank you.
Yes, thank you to everyone. And Kate mentioned earlier that we are going to have our next session is going to be about photographing your artwork. And I believe that is February 8th is
it
what
is.
the date was. Yeah, February 8th,
Yeah.
photographing your art. So hopefully you can sign up for that session. And if you're on Instagram and you're not following us yet, please do. We're at the artists, or actually it's just artistsnetwork.ca and lesliegrovegallery.ca. And
And
if
one
you
more
have any
thing, sorry,
questions,
I just wanted to add one more thing too, because
Yep.
with our education sessions, we've actually just made live on our website a questionnaire that so you can rank the kinds of things that you're interested in learning about, which would be really helpful for us to be able to then prioritize what is going to be most valuable to the community. If there's something that's not there that you think we should be covering, then please add it there as well, because we definitely will be using the results of that survey to determine our next education sessions. And you can find that under education on the Artist Network website.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Hi, it's Cheryl Bailey. I just I have always been kind of a nickel and dime person, and I know that you got to spend to get and that, but I never feel like as if I know how much it costs to put together the booth and all that. So how much do I have to make in order to pay for my effort?
Well,
And
do you have a tent?
no, I have nothing except
You have
painting.
to rent a tent.
Yeah.
So I would say if you, let's assume you have a car and you have your own transportation, because otherwise you have to rent a vehicle, right? So
Yeah.
I would say that your on-site costs minimum, like for just budgeting purposes, $500 minimum.
For the tent and the
Yeah,
grids.
if you're doing rentals, you have to rent grids. Fencing is even more expensive, but I would say a minimum of $500. Think
Okay.
about like you have to buy plastic, you have to buy wrap for your art, you have to maybe you have to get a cart, all that sort of stuff. I think that I would just budget $500.
Okay, that's good to know.
For
I think
like,
a bare minimum.
doing your booth and all that sort of stuff, like if you're renting a booth.
The
Yeah.
other thing too is if you really think that you're going to do more than a few outdoor shows, it becomes much more cost effective to actually buy a tent. And
Yeah.
around in the early spring, Costco usually has a basic white tent for, I don't know, maybe $400. So
The kind with sides.
yeah,
Yeah.
with sides. I know my first one lasted me, I don't know, 13 years before I had to finally replace it. So it cost me, I think, $395. So I got my money's worth out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
Okay.
it's more work, so you have to worry about that because you probably have to maybe have to bring someone to help you carry it and schlep it and stuff. But from a cost-effective point of view, it makes much more sense.
Yeah,
Right.
Pat, would you agree with that about $500 to budget? If you're renting, you rented at the last show, right?
Yeah, definitely. Kate, just quick question. If, for example, the Costco tent, is that the same quality as the tents that we're renting? Is that around the same sort of?
So there's stainless steel. I mean, I personally am a control monger, so I like to own my own tent because I know what
Right.
it looks like. I know how it behaves. You can either get a steel frame tent, or an aluminum. So the aluminum is a little bit lighter, but it's also it's a bit more fragile. The steel is a bit stronger, but it's heavier. So
Right,
there's
okay.
a company actually just up on Steel somewhere or whatever that actually produces the tents, or where you can buy them directly from them as well.
Yeah, and you can customize what type of legs you want and stuff, right, Kate?
Yeah.
And covers.
You can customize the legs, you can customize how thick you want the walls. I had my name printed on their canopy, so I wouldn't have to carry a sign. So, and we can certainly make that part of the orientation because they're pretty helpful.
Mhm.
But I'd say minimum $500.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't remember the name of that tent company.
I want to say Caravan, but that's.
No, it is, of course it's Caravan.
Caravan? Okay, all right. So if you go to Caravan's website, it'll give you an idea of how much it costs to rent a tent. And I would say, I would heavily recommend that if you are buying a tent, sorry, not rent a tent, if you're going to buy a tent, I would say they're really good. But I would honestly, I've seen so many tents collapse with a weight. So depending on what shows you're looking at doing, even last year, Riverdale Art Walk was kind of windy, but some of these shows are pretty windy. I did the Oakville show and it's right off the lake. And I think if you don't have a steel frame tent, it's much more likely that it's going to collapse.
You have to make sure also it's waterproof as well.
Yeah.
It depends. They're not usually waterproof. They're usually water resistant. So what I do is I spray mine every year.
Yeah, tents aren't waterproof unless you rent the waterproof heavy duty tents. They're thousands of dollars, so. Not to rent, I mean, to buy,
Okay.
but they're more expensive to rent too. I don't know if we'll have them this year, but we can go through all of that at the orientation. If you have specific questions and those things are holding you off, whether you want to apply or not, just send me an email, angela@artists.network.ca, and I'll try my best to answer.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, hopefully we'll see
Okay.
you all in the park.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Stop the recording.